All right, so here's the political topic for today. And I'm talking about the caste system. I heard a wonderful podcast that helped me understand what's happened. Like many Americans, I was very upset about the last election, and it seemed to me very strange that Trump won, and I couldn't understand it because he is very different than previous presidents. And this podcast had the best explanation of what happened here. That's what I got out of it. So this is Isabel Wilkerson. She wrote a book, and there's a podcast on the Ezra Klein Show where she explains her book. And so here's a previous protest, very much like the Black Lives Matter protest, although this is from the 1960s, where these people go to march around saying, "I am a man," and they're confronted by armed police that see them as a threat. And so the thing that was new to me and which really helps me understand this is her explanation of this based on India. She traveled to India and went to a conference about abolishing castes. And in India, of course, they have this very old system of castes where people are sorted by birth into certain groups, and those groups have limited rights and certain jobs they can do and jobs they can't do, and all sorts of everything in life is determined by what caste you're in. And there are people that want to eliminate this system in India. And she went to the conference of people who were there to eliminate the castes. So they were all what we'd call the liberals or progressives over here. And yet she immediately could tell who was high caste and who was low caste by just looking at the way they treated each other. Some of them felt entitled to just interrupt others. If certain people said something, someone else would just repeat it to explain it, as if that somehow made it more significant. They would stand with different postures. The more dominant one would loom over the other. And they were upset when she told the people she was with about this, because they all felt like they were the enlightened, modern, progressive people that no longer support the caste system. And yet their lives were still based on what they had learned unconsciously about this caste system. So one thing to know is there's no such thing as one caste. There's only a plural, because this is a dance of dominance and submission. It specifies who is above someone else. And it's an interesting thing. And I've seen it all my life, of course, with animals. Chickens do this. I live with chickens, and they're everywhere. Chickens are always arguing. And what they're mostly arguing about is who's the boss. I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. And then I'll peck you. You better get down. It is an instinctual thing to decide who's the boss in each interaction. So this is an unconscious thing. And even these people who felt like they were opposing it were still doing it, which is a big issue. So in Americans, we have terms for this hierarchy. In the last 10 years, it has begun to become fairly common for people to realize that we have a caste system like India, and they talk about the behavior, like the chickens pecking each other, that enforces this. Things like microaggressions, mansplaining, white-splaining, where one person will do something just to put the other person in their place. And so the Indian castes were an interesting thing to learn from, because in India, the castes are not physical. You cannot look at someone, if you're not Indian, and tell what caste they're in. Perhaps the Indians can, and so it's not an obvious physical feature. It's just something that comes from their ancestry. And so an outsider will look at a bunch of rooms and say, all you people appear to be the same, but some of you obviously feel like you're better than others. And it is obvious to me that this is unreasonable. So this is something I've worried about all my life. I read history about the Roman Empire and how the Romans felt like they were superior to everyone and they would have more rights. And of course, they're better because they're Romans, and other people are just barbarians and they should just trample them. And I wondered, how would I know if I was inside such a system? And that's what The Matrix was about. These people are inside a system where they believe a bunch of lies, and they're offered a pill. If you take the red pill, you will wake up and see the truth, and it will change everything. And this is, consciousness raising, they used to call it in the 70s. It is a difficult thing. And so the Indian caste system has been around for thousands of years. Their religion is based on it. Sacred texts explain this. They do not use the word caste in Indian. They have these terms like Brahman and other terms for each caste. And they see it all as absolutely the natural order of things. God took the parts of the body and created the castes. One caste represents the head of the body, others represent the feet of the body, and so on. and they just see this as your role. You will do this certain part of activity because that's what you're designed for, basically by God. Now, in America, we have this thing called race. And race is an entirely artificial social construct. It does not have any biological basis or clear meaning. It was originally not connected to skin color. That came with the transatlantic slave trade. It was, however, formed by European explorers. And the biblical basis was in Genesis. Noah, he had several sons, and one of his sons saw his father naked, and for that he was cursed, and said, "You will be a servant to the other sons, and this will pass forever unto your generation." So the idea is, just like the Indian caste system, some group of people are ordained by God to be servants to the others, and that will just be their fate forever. So this was considered to be righteous. It was considered to be God's plan. It was considered to be the natural role of people. So the slaveholders and even the people that are beating people and chaining them and torturing them felt like they were doing God's work and they were righteous. They did not feel ashamed or guilty of what they're doing. They felt like they were making society the way it should be. And here's another fun fact. There are no black people in Africa. They don't think that way. They have their own groups, but this bipolar system of white and black was brought from the UK to America, and it was defined to determine your legal rights. If you were black, you did not have much rights and you were a slave. If you were white, you were able to own slaves and nobody could make a slave out of you. So it was important, just like in South Africa, your legal status depended on whether you were white or not. So this term Caucasian was determined by German anthropologists based on a skull, and the skull was from the area now called Syria. And those people probably wouldn't be accepted as white in America, but that was the original term used to define this group that later became associated with what we now call white. And it's not based on color, because the Japanese skin is paler than the normal skin of people that passed for white in America. So a Japanese man in America petitioned to be declared white because it was a legal status that would affect how you were treated in America. And his case was rejected because it's not the color of your skin. It is about how you would be perceived. So here you've got a sort of maddening circular system. People are told how to live because they're in a certain group. And then they say, how do I know what group I'm in? They say, you're in whatever group we say you're in. That's all. It doesn't actually come from any property in you. So why should it determine your life? But that's just the way it was. And most people accept it and don't question it, and they're trained into it. So you get down to cases like this. In the 1940s, a 15-year-old boy gave a Christmas card to another girl who was white. And he said he liked her, and he was murdered for that. A gang forced him to jump in the river and drown with his father watching, because they had this brutal, harsh punishment. Because since there is, in fact, no reality to the separation of the castes, you must have harsh, brutal social structures to enforce the castes. If there was any natural truth to it, then people might get along with it. But it's an artificial system held up by constant brutality. But the thing that I did not realize until I heard this podcast is the people doing this do not feel like monsters. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. They think they're holding up the system the way it should be. They do not feel evil. They're good fathers, good Christians. They're pillars of the community, and they are enforcing the laws of our culture to make it go the way they think it should go. And so this is like a house. Your house is held up by a certain frame with pillars and joists, but you can't see them. They still hold it up, though. And these people see it as their duty as a member of the dominant caste to enforce the hierarchy, to pass on to their children a social structure that will hold together and continue to function. So you have these ways to degrade the lower caste, like the practice of blackface, which is still done in America, where white people will dress up as black people as a humorous activity to demonstrate how ridiculous it is to imagine that a white person could be a black person, and to exaggerate the inferior activity of the black people. So this is from a candidate for the city council in 2018, a photo from 2008. Here's a candidate for sheriff who had photographs of him in blackface. And here's Virginia's governor, who posed in blackface next to people dressed up like the KKK in a medical school book. And that was from 1984. So this stuff is still alive. It's not something from the past. It's not something that's gone. It's a modern thing. And all right. So this is dehumanizing. The dominant caste is superior and the rest people are not human. And so if you do things to them, like whip them and torture them and lock them up, that is not doing it to a human. That's doing it to an inferior being like an animal. And they don't feel guilty about this. They see them as themselves as holding up the righteous system, enforcing the way society should work. And so you've got lynchings. This one's from 1920, and they would lynch people in public and they would bring the children, and the children are happy and smiling at this event. This is training them the way nature should be. They're not ashamed, they're not shocked. It is a lesson in morality to them. And this goes deeply into humans at an emotional level. This is subconscious. It's not that you necessarily can have a logical argument why this is true or defend it. And it's not that you can oppose it with logic and rationality. It's just your emotional feeling of how life should be. Like, I remember when I was a child, my father would go to work in the morning. He would overcome great effort to go to work. He'd be gone all day. He would come home tired and grouchy. And I learned that that's what life should be. Life should have this thing called work. And you're not really a proper man if you don't have a job to go off and work. Those are fundamental ideas about how the world is that you pick up. And people absorb their caste system here. Nobody asks to be born in their caste. And if you do violate the caste rules, then there are social consequences to punish you for breaking the rules. So the path of least resistance is to just accept the caste you're born into. And if you actually want to be a success in your culture, you have to move up by becoming an upstanding person. And that means a person who enforces the rules and cooperates with the rules and fits into the system. And so we get to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a very strange creature in America. We have never had a leader like this. And you can see it a lot of ways. One, Donald Trump has an incredibly loyal base. 40% of Americans really like Trump, and it does not matter what he does. Most presidents have their approval fluctuate wildly as crises come and they do things that are popular and things that are unpopular. Nothing ever changes Donald Trump's approval, up or down. 40% of Americans love him, and they will always love him. When he was campaigning, he said, I could just pull out a gun and shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and my supporters would not leave me, which appears to be true. Nothing he does matters. Other presidents had wildly fluctuating. Obama had the common arrangement. When he first got in, he was popular, and then he fell in popularity after that, which is the usual thing. You campaign, you promise to do a lot of things, and then when you get in office, you can't really do those things, and people start getting fed up and feeling like you betrayed them and your popularity falls. That's the normal arrangement, and all of them followed that pattern. George Bush had the 9/11 disaster. And that made him very popular because he was seen as the heroic leader uniting us to deal with this. And then after that, he had the falling thing here. So this is the way a normal president goes, where their popularity depends on how much people feel like they're doing the right thing. And Trump is bizarre and different. His popularity does not depend on what happens or what he does about it. People just love him for some other reason, which has nothing to do with his performance or his promises. And here you can see the polarization of America. The red people, the Republicans win, then the Democrats win with blue, then the Republicans win again. And every time, of course, the winning person is liked more by their own party than the other. But the two sides drift apart until you have the most popular Republican we've had in more than 50 years. And he is more hated than anyone has ever been before by the Democrats. And here you have this outrageous polarization. So something is going on where Republicans really, really, really love Trump, and it doesn't matter what he does. And Democrats really hate him more than they've hated anybody else in my lifetime. This is my entire lifetime here, and I'm watching it. And when this first happened, I just thought my country has gone mad, and maybe I should leave. This is horrible. And now I feel like I understand what's happening, which makes me feel more in control of my life and more like I know what to do about it. So The other thing, which is surprising, at first I thought Republicans must just be stupid. They don't see the obvious problems with Trump, but that, of course, is not true. They do know what's wrong with Trump. They know that he lies. They know that he exaggerates. They know that he is dishonest financially. They just don't care. They are aware of his flaws, and they say, yeah, it would be better if he would quit tweeting so much and stop lying so much and be more honest. But they don't care. That doesn't affect their support of him. They love him anyway. There's something about him that is just right. And you'll see who likes him. Men like him more than women. White people like him a lot, but Black people really don't like him. Old people like him, but young people don't like him so much. And uneducated people like him, and the more education they have, the less like him. And of course, Republicans like him to an incredible amount, 89% here. And Democrats hate him in a mirror image. So that's the issue. And you can see it's extremely clear. It's racism. Donald Trump is the perfect archetype of someone enforcing the American caste system, and that is what just seems right to Republicans at an emotional level. He's making America the way it should be by putting people in their place. So here's the things he believes: we should use waterboarding, Muslims should not be allowed in, Arabs are traitors, and even the Arab Americans are traitors, and they're on the other side in 9/11. Illegal migrants should be deported. Syrian refugees can't be trusted, and the Black Lives Matter movement is terrible and should be opposed. These are all standard white supremacy positions, and he holds these things, and he is greatly supported by Republicans at an emotional level. So it doesn't matter what he does. They see him as supporting what they believe. So Trump claims that he's helped more African Americans more than any president since Lincoln. And everything we have is now in danger. A radical movement is going to completely destroy the American way of life. And he doesn't think that anybody should complain about the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Jacob Blake. These are anarchists, agitators, rioters, looters, and flag burners. They are disobeying the caste system. They are out of their place, and they're what's wrong with America, the people that are complaining about this. And James Woods, the actor, talks about the great thing about Trump is he loves America more than any president in my lifetime. And what this means is he loves the caste system. He understands it. He's supporting it. He is upholding what the Republicans see as correct. They feel as correct. And so here he is at the Democratic National Convention. Joe Biden keeps saying America is racially bigoted, and that's a terrible thing. Since they don't like this country, why don't they just leave? And so you get situations like just happened a few days ago. This teenage vigilante was a Trump supporter, and he went on Facebook and found out about this group where you would go protect people against those dangerous Black protesters. And so he got a gun and went out and shot them. And when he did, he brought a rifle to the protest. He went and shot people, and then he left. And when he left, the same police that would shoot an unarmed Black man for just disobeying orders helped him, gave him a water bottle. When he went by with a rifle after shooting people, the police saw him as a good, trustworthy friend, and they let him go and didn't arrest him or anything, didn't give him any trouble. They could spot, because he was white, that he was okay, and he has the right to shoot those protesters. And it's a question of your fundamental values, and that's why there's just tons of this. The police and militias have been infiltrated by white supremacists, and the FBI has pointed this out in response to the Trump administration is to fire the FBI leaders that dare to say such things. There's a huge problem in America of right-wing extremists like that teenager, and much more organized, more serious threats of right-wingers that perform terrorism and kill people, and the Trump administration does not want to admit it at all or do anything about it because they're on that side. And Trump doesn't want to talk about white supremacy. So, this is, and the thing is, it's not exactly that they are evil and you can argue out of it. They have a different vision of America. They want to take us back to the ancient system of castes, and the progressives want to escape that and have a different system. So anyway, it is an important issue. And I feel better now that I understand it more. And I also think that the protesters in the street have correctly found the essential thing that we must do now. It is the caste system and the racism in America that is the reason why people support Trump. And it is the central issue that we disagree about, just like we have from the very beginning and the Civil War and back to the slave trade. There is a group of people that are the Democrats that feel like we should stop the racial caste system. And the other group of people is now the Republicans that feel like we should hold up the caste system. And they don't talk about it openly because it's at an emotional level. But I think bringing this information into the open and talking about it may perhaps help us deal with this huge division we've got. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. And I'll stop this one.